Stand for the pledge. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, Angie will call this meeting to order. Take roll call.
Bergstrom? Vaughn?
Yes.
Harris?
Here.
Eisner?
Here.
Johnston?
Here.
Gelding?
Here. Okay. We'll go ahead and start with recognitions.
So our first recognition is our Olympic champion. I'll have he's here present and can stand, and I'll allow Ms. Klein to discuss AJ's successes.
Yeah, so last week, the Belmont Special Olympics program took 4 athletes to a national unified tournament in Las Vegas. So there were 17 states represented. Wisconsin, we were able to nominate athletes for this opportunity, and we had 2 teams selected. It's the first time we've ever participated at a national level. And so AJ's partner is my son, Jacob. And then my daughter is a unified partner with another young adult from a neighboring community. So our families all went out to Las Vegas last week. They bowled as a team, the 4 of them as a team, and they took 5th place. And then Jacob and AJ bowled as a doubles team, and they took a gold medal. So we came home really, really excited. It was the first time that we've been able to do something like this. Very, very thankful that the program is well supported by the area communities, and AJ and his family were able to join us. So current student, former student, so some nice recognition for us.
Congratulations.
And AJ brought his medal. And so this tournament is part of Special Olympics North America, which is obviously all of the states programs are represented, and it's part of the Open Bowling Championship. So it's like the kickoff event for the National Open Bowling Championship. So we bowled on the same lanes where the PGA bowlers are bowling this week and next week. So it was very fun. We had a lot of fun, didn't we? Yeah. And it was nice weather. So do you want to show them all? You can shake their hands.
Congratulations.
Congratulations. One more. I'm gonna go shake Mr. Wainwright's hand.
Congratulations. Next up, you've seen these before with other athletic teams. Our cross-country team was academic all-state. I think if we go down here, it's just this brief little blurb I'd like to share. Again, if you're on the varsity team, your grade point average counts. So if you are a varsity team member, and if you look at the girls' cumulative GPA for the team was 3.9998.
Oh, they just couldn't quite get there.
Just slightly outdoing the boys, who were 3.9668.
Wow.
So again, talk about kids getting it done with a lot of hours and time dedicated outside of school and getting it done in the school. So congratulations to the cross-country team on being academic all-state. And we'll turn it over to our wrestling coach. We had a very successful winter sports season with wrestling. Coach Fiedler.
First off, thank you for inviting us to this. I appreciate it. Unfortunately, a bunch of our kids had prior obligations, so I got the lone kiddo up here, Elliot Kite. qualified at 113 pounds, but we had an awesome showing at sectionals, getting forward to the state tournament. I'm greedy. I would always like more, but it was an outstanding tournament for them. It was great experience for Elliot, who's only a freshman, being able to compete at the state tournament, and all 4 kids coming back next year with Delia and Rowan getting second and Cade winning it up at the Cole Center. I'm super proud of that crew, super excited about what we got coming back with those kids, and again, just super pumped of how they represented Mineral Point that weekend up at the Cole Center. So, very proud of them.
And I, being the basketball guy that I am, I do know, for Elliot to make it as a freshman, this is probably the toughest part of the state to qualify for state wrestling. So for Elliot to be able to do that, that's a great feather in his cap as well. So a lot to be proud of, and we wish him nothing but the best in the next 3 years.
Just to elaborate on how tough our area is, I believe overall there is 5 different teams across the state that are moving up a division with their competitive balance and their success over the last years. 2 of them come from our conference. So we see a lot of good competition week in and week out, and it showed by Elliot and Cade and Delia and Rowan all making it, and iron sharpens iron in that regard.
Well, congratulations, Elliot, to the rest of the wrestling. Elliot, did you want to say a few words? Coach Fiedler, I'll throw this one to you too if you'd like to speak. Our middle school wrestlers had a pretty good showing here last weekend.
I can speak to this too. So middle school team state tournament has not been around for very long, but it has grown tremendously. We have now participated the last 3 years, I believe. In the last 2 years, we have gotten second. Last year, we lost to Luxembourg Casco at the middle school team state tournament. This year, got a great group of kids that wrestled tremendously that ended up getting second to Aquinas in the small school division. It's an awesome group with a bunch of kids that are going to be helping us in the next few years, and super excited of the group that are coming up. The coaches did an outstanding job. The coaches there, Justin Sokol, Colby McReynolds, Mike Potterton, Kyle Carey. I hope I'm not missing anyone. And Lucas Sullivan, excuse me. All of them put in a ton of work with these guys, and our kids did an outstanding job at that as well.
So congratulations to our middle school wrestling team. State gymnastics, as the title says, best finish ever at state. The Dodgeville, Mineral Point, Iowa Grant, Highland Co-op, tongue-in-cheek for 2, team was well represented, finished 6th in Division II in Wisconsin Rapids. They've had 6 state appearances, and finishing in 6th place was the best finish for that team. And again, we had some students that were part of that team. Talks about 3rd place on the balance beam was Faith Young. They scored a 9.233 out of 10. So you realize what the competition must be like if that puts her in 3rd place. And Brooklyn Murphy and Myra Barr for their performances to wrap up an amazing season. So congratulations to the Dodgeville, Mineral Point, Iowa Grant, Highland gymnastics team for their best finish at a state tournament appearance. And Maya, are you online with us? Okay. Maya's parents were unable to make it. Maya was hoping maybe she would be able to join us online. WEMTA is the Wisconsin Educational Media and Technology Association, and they had a competition to create book trailers. So students read a book, then they would go on and do a video kind of explaining the book and try to generate some excitement around reading the book. So Maya placed third in the elementary category as a fifth grader from the Mineral Point School District. And I don't even know, do you know, Angie, what book it was that she was even reading to do this? I was hoping she'd be online to kind of tell us a little bit, maybe give us a Reader's Digest version of the book and her little video. But again, through the state of Wisconsin, finishing, placing third for this book trailer, quite an honor for middle school students. Mr. Ingwell, you know what book she read?
I talked to her, but now I can't even remember what book it was. When it came out, he was really excited to talk about it, so I should know the book at the top of my head too, but.
It's quite all right, but congratulations to Maya, and thank you for representing Mineral Point School District so well. Congratulations. That's all I have. Recognitions.
Okay. Great, we'll move to consent agenda. I'll take a motion to approve the agenda, which includes minutes from the last regular meeting and our 4 committee meetings we've had in the meantime, plus bills payable and the credit card statement of activity, or we can also approve them individually.
I'll make a motion to approve them all together.
I will second.
Okay. Any discussion or questions?
I did notice, I don't know if it's a discussion, but it was helpful. There was enough detail in the notes. I had to miss one of the committee meetings because I was out sick, and it was actually really helpful to be able to read those. So I don't know, credit to whoever took those, but thank you.
You did the minutes, didn't you, Mitch? Yeah.
Thanks, Mitch.
Yeah. I said the same thing. I thought they were good.
Thank you.
Anybody else?
Thompson,
Yes.
Belding,
Yes.
Bergstrom,
Yes.
Harris,
Yes.
Eisner,
Yes.
Yes. Okay, next we'll go to communications. We'll start with board communications. Joni, you have anything?
I received one email. I do believe this one went to the entire school board, but asking about some follow-up questions regarding the summer care and really the timeline around that. So just wanted to acknowledge that, and then that has been responded to in addition. I know that at this point the survey has gone out and we're exploring, but just wanted to acknowledge that we had received it.
In addition to that one, there was one email from a faculty member about one of the positions we're talking about tonight. So I'll leave it at that.
Yep.
Yeah, in addition to that, I had some parents reach out to me personally about the extending Pointer Kids Club into the summer. And the interest there. Also, an email about the district calendar and kind of taking the fair dates into play and, starting before September. So, but that was it.
I had a similar around the date of the start of school, the one that I think we all got regarding the faculty position, and then I had 2 personal outreaches about the summer programming. Yeah. That's it.
I did not get anything in addition to those either. Mr. Harris, did you get any additional communications?
No, I just wanted to communicate that on the school calendar one, I replied to that email and just mentioned that, that we're not allowed to start before September 1st for the Department of Public Instruction. I think that's only if, because the email was asking to start earlier, basically, and I don't think that we can, unless we're doing like a construction project or something that necessitates that. In the email, there was a suggestion that we not have spring break anymore. And because people kind of take spring break whenever it's good for them, I guess case in point. So I thought that was interesting, an interesting idea to end school earlier and just not have spring break, and then people can take it when they want to, if they want to go with their families. But the only people that would really affect necessarily are the teachers who would then not receive a spring break. But I was curious about that, and I guess to Mitch, if teachers prefer getting out of school a week earlier or if they prefer to have the spring break. And I said I didn't know, but I was curious about that, and I thought it was an interesting suggestion. And that was all I'll say.
I meet with a committee that involves staff members from all three levels, assistants, and every once in a while, spring break will come up, and it will be, could we or would we consider a Thursday, Friday, Monday around Easter, so that Good Friday fell in there, and without fail, the vast majority of the staff doesn't necessarily support that approach. So I mean, it's not to say we couldn't bring it back up again, in another year looking at a calendar, but I know that conversation has happened multiple times in the years that I've been here, and every time it comes up, it doesn't seem to gain enough traction with the staff to support it.
Great. That's good to know. And it's great to know that you've already talked about it.
Okay. We'll move on to citizen communications. Did you need to sign up tonight? Okay. If anyone in the room would like to make a comment, or anyone online, you can use your raise hand icon. Going once, going twice. All right. Thank you. Next is items for information and discussion. First is the school board priorities.
So in the realm of recruitment, the video is coming along. We're working on some of the last pieces. So I've got some students in the media group working on it. Unfortunately, there are two probably more pressing issues that have come up in recent history. One being the candidate interviews, and two is the success of the boys basketball team. That'll be taking some attention away from the media class, but they're still working on it. So hopefully I'll have that up and posted to our website in the very near future. I don't have any additional updates as far as providing a safe and social emotional environment. We continue to work with Sources of Strength. Those programs are in place, but I don't have anything new to share since our last meeting. Oh, I take that back.
Just kind of an update. I know that some of you, when we presented in January, whatever that was, we talked about middle school YRBS results not being back, high school were. We just got an email last week saying there was a glitch in the scoring software, and middle school results are still not out, and they don't know when they will be out. So if you were kind of waiting for us to come back and share out middle school stuff, we will as soon as we get them, but we still don't have the results from last spring.
Good. And what else? Board governance. We're going to go over the evaluation tool results later in the agenda today, which we are doing quarterly, just to see if we can make our board meetings more productive and more efficient. I'm looking at the parking lot right now. I like how you made a column for associating them with each priority. So some of them still need labels on them. No, but that's great. That's great. No, that's
Well done.
I think that's really helpful. So that'll be good for a quick reference. I think that's about it, other than we still have intent to maybe have a student present at board meetings starting in the fall. And Mitch and I are working on trying to get that person selected by the end of the school year. I guess it wouldn't be starting in the fall, it would be starting this summer, potentially.
Is it you guys identifying somebody or opening it up to interest?
I think our tentative plan is to have the student council elect somebody. Okay, great. Next is an update on the board candidate interviews for the April election.
We originally tried to establish the candidate forum as it's been done in the past. Dates were difficult to come by. So we have extended invitations out to have the media students. They'll present a series of questions. They'll record candidate answers and get them up and posted online as soon as we can complete the interviews. So some of them will be in-house, some of them will connect either through Zoom or some other format, but we're working on getting those up. The election is coming in April, so we're just trying to get that information out for anybody that's interested. Hopefully everybody that is a candidate received an email that I forwarded from Dodgeville Chronicle and the Democrat from Pat Riley. So you can answer those questions and send them back to Pat. He'll get those in the local papers before the election.
By this Friday?
15th, I think is the date I got. Is that this Friday?
Yes.
Yes.
Are the candidate interviews going to be videotaped? Or
Yes.
you said, okay,
Yes.
all right.
We did think about having kids kind of role play your answers, but then we'll just video record. Put your face on
Mock
screen there.
interview? Yeah. Okay, good, thank you.
Yep.
Next is budget comparison year to year.
So in your board package, you have the budget year to date in February of 23 versus February of 24. A year ago at this time, we had spent about 53% of our budget. And so far in February of 24, we spent about 52%. So again, as always, kind of right within that 1 to maybe 2 percentage points difference from year over year as far as expenses are concerned. So basically tracking right where we hope to be from one year to the next.
So again, no unexpected expenses or changes in revenue.
No.
Okay.
And that salary bump is in this number. So there is no surprise coming in another month or 2 months or whatever. We're right on basically where we would hope to be.
Okay.
And then I didn't get it in for information, but I will just mention something on the summer kids group. The survey closed. We had a total of 41 students. Of the 41, 28 said that would be very, very important to be running a program in the summer. So about 2/3 to 1/3. I did ask the kitchen on costs for food service, running a breakfast and running a lunch at the time. And the response was obviously the more students we have, the more cost efficient it gets. If we were up in that mid 70s to 80s, it would probably cost about $12 per pupil to run the breakfast and the lunch. The fewer the students, the more that cost is going to go up on a per pupil basis. If we have about half the students, we're talking kind of double the cost. We would also need someone who has the DPI food service certification, be responsible or overseeing. They don't necessarily have to prep the meals, but then somebody else has to prep the meals. But we would need to have somebody, potentially 2 staff people. So that kind of drives some of those costs higher. In follow-up conversations, we know for sure that there would be some additional staffing needs, for that number of students, we're probably looking at least 3 adults, paid adults to be present. So again, it starts to push costs for the program to a point where it might not be feasible for us to run this program. Mr. Ingwell, I know you've put out a flyer for our own summer school. How many staff members do you have interested in that currently?
I'll have more. I'm gonna update my plan. There's probably a good handful right now, but I'll send more out based on information or more staff of enrichment ideas. So I'll definitely get more. I just haven't been pushed out as much as I've only pushed out once.
Okay.
Can we get a summary of the results of the summer Pointer Kids Club survey results?
Yes.
What are you thinking timeline on this process, Mitch? Are you thinking taking it to either operations or personnel committee before the next regular meeting?
Yes.
Okay.
Which one you think?
Start with operations.
Operations?
Yeah. Right?
Hey, Aaron.
Yep.
I just have a couple of questions on this. So one question is, why do we have to, it seems to me like this could be like more of a private thing, like the Pointers Kids Club is something we charge for. And, when we established the Pointer Kids Club, it was kind of, I know it's on school property, but in school employees, but it was sort of separated. And there was some legal blurring there, when it came to disabilities and other things that we've talked about. But I guess to me, why wouldn't we charge for this? Because it's basically supplementing daycare. I think people are happy to pay for it. There's just no daycare available, was the point. And then also, do we have to provide meals? Could it just be a brown bag thing?
We did put a cost associated with the program in the survey. So parents were aware that there would be, if it's one student, it would cost this. If you're sending a second student, there would be a little bit of a reduction and so on and so forth. So that was part of the survey. As far as the meals are concerned, I guess you could certainly say we're not providing anything. Most daycares provide something, for at least a lunch if someone's there for a 6-8 hour day. So in trying to, I guess, align it with similar services, that's why we looked at, that's why I reached out to food service to find out what kind of costs would be associated with that.
That makes sense, Mitch. I guess to me, I would align the costs with the demand. So, if it's 30 kids, the cost for lunch is this. If we don't have enough, the cost is going to be more, and just pass it on to the consumer. Because this is like an extra thing. This is not an obligation of the school district. And I want to be very clear about that. So this is an extra thing we're trying to do to help. But, my understanding is it's mostly coming from people that would be willing to pay for childcare, but they can't find it. So, in my opinion, I think we should pass as many of the costs as we can on to the people who are using the service.
I agree, and I think that was the original intent too.
Yeah, I think the assumption is that this would be a budget neutral type endeavor. And I agree with Will. I mean, I think that we could probably do some sort of cold lunch brown bag thing that maybe could be provided by our food service, but maybe something that's fairly easy to prep and doesn't require a lot of labor or upfront costs, but getting in the weeds there a little bit. So I think definitely, digesting in committees is a wise thing to do next. You want to say something, Mitch?
I was just, when we put the survey out, there was pretty good debate going as to what kind of a cost would be associated, what's the cost to send your child, send a child to daycare, versus, okay, what would the cost be for us, so on and so forth. So again, it was we just tried to put a ballpark price on it so that families would kind of have an idea as we start going down this path. Obviously, if we're going to provide all of these other things, then that cost is going to change drastically, again, depending on the number of students as well. So, and we just had a starting point, and there was nothing set in stone that this is what we were doing.
Thank you.
Yep.
All right.
So just to be clear, next steps will be the operations committee will pick up the spreadsheet or, whatever to look at costs, and then also the summary of the survey results. Right?
Yes.
Okay.
I mean, is it reasonable to have a up or down vote on whether to do this program this summer by the April meeting? Just so parents can plan,
Seems like
Sure.
have it hashed out in committee and either recommend it or not, and then full vote, not April.
Sounds good.
Okay.
Sooner the better. For families.
Yeah. Okay, next we'll do a brief review of our committee meetings. Again, the minutes will be posted on the agenda once it's put on the website, but we can start with finance. Mr. Bush is our finance chair who couldn't make it tonight. Rich, do you mind summarizing, or I'm happy to just kind of read the highlights of those minutes?
Danielle Miller was here, and we shared out the Baird model, the Baird financial model. So Baird basically took 5 years of our financial history, so they could go back in time and put all those into a spreadsheet, and then gave us our current year's information. And then from there we can project moving out, what if no staff changes and we give CPI pay raise, a 4.12% pay raise, what does that do to the budget? What does an insurance increase do to our budget? So Danielle has had an opportunity to put in a lot of the numbers. So if we hold the line on classroom budgets and those kinds of things, she is able to give a projection. We can look out kind of where do we see the potential need for referendum dollars for an operating referendum. What does that look like? And we can use numbers to kind of model how we would lay in a referendum question, and the total dollar amount going to the community. It can be, you can add in other factors. You can run multiple scenarios. Well, what if we have not given any steps, which is kind of moving down the pay scale in the last 3 years, because as was negotiated years and years ago, if the school can afford CPI, then you look at, can they afford steps? If you can afford CPI and steps, can you afford lanes? And you keep moving down. So you have to be able to afford a payment in every one of those, cover that increased cost before you go down to the next step. We have not done that. We have not even issued a CPI in, the last 2 years. So, we can set up scenarios like, okay, if we offer a 4.12%, what does it look like if we offer steps next year? What does that do to our budget? And if insurance is 10% or 5%, those numbers can be put in this model, and it gives you fairly accurate data moving forward. The one thing it doesn't take into consideration is who's going to be here as a staff member. Do we have any retirements? Do we have any changes in our staffing of that nature? But it does give the district a little bit more of a better vision moving forward based on our current revenues. We know that next year is year 2 of a biennium. So we know we're going to get $325 more per pupil. So we can put that in. We know that if we lose students in the budget, there's something called hold harmless. So they if we lose 5 students, our revenues would stay the same for next year. If we continue to lose, our revenues would come down. But this hold harmless kind of takes a little bit of that sting out. It doesn't make up for all of it. So we could go in and say, okay, if our enrollment is flat for next year, knowing we're going to get 325, we have a better picture of what our revenues will look like for next year. And this Baird model kind of helps put those things together for us. Coming out of the committee then, it was asked to bring back for the April committee, what does a 4.12% look like with no steps? What does it look like with steps? What does 5% look like with no steps? What does 5% look like with steps? And then just a simple, for easy calculations, what does 1% on salary look like? So you know if 1% is 100,000, well, 5% is going to be 500,000, just for easy calculations and considerations that way. So that will be coming to the April Finance Committee meeting. Typically, that's the first Monday or the Monday before the board meeting. That's our first Monday back to school after spring break. So depending on how the other committee meetings shake out, it might be on a Wednesday or it might be Thursday of that week to have that committee meeting prior to the April board meeting, where we would then want to be determining what kind of a percentage do we want to pay on teacher contracts so that we can get those contracts out then in a timely fashion.
What's the deadline or what's the timeline for getting contracts drafted?
And typically they usually go out April 15th. Last year, if you remember, we issued a letter of intent to employ because we didn't know. We didn't know what kind of revenues we were going to get from Madison. We didn't know any of those kinds of things. So we issued a letter of intent to employ for next year, which basically was a contract holder. And once we got information, we knew what percent we were going to be paying. Then we got updated contracts out. But typically, middle of April is when those contracts go out.
Any other questions about that? Yeah. Thanks, Mitch. Okay, personnel, Joni?
Yes, so the Personnel Committee met a week ago tonight. We had a couple topics to address. The first one was talking about dance chaperones and possible compensation. This was really a revisit of a discussion we had in November, but we shortly after in the November school board meeting, Mr. Wainwright had brought forth the revised behavior, I can't remember exact words we used. Dance guidelines. Thank you. Yep. And we've confirmed that that those will be shared out with all the parents, or with all the families of the high school students closer to prom. So that was one of our to-dos. And then we also talked about chaperone levels and compensation. And so the administration is taking that back to finalize some things. So we do have an update here that we're looking at a guideline of about one adult per 50 students, and that aligns us with other districts. So feels like it'll be good to have a guideline around that. We talked about 2 potential staffing ads, which are actually on the agenda later, so I'm not going to delve into those. And then finally, we talked about the middle school, supporting a middle school track program, middle school track and cross-country program using the kind of the normal additive pay structure. And the committee was recommending that too all.
The idea, middle school track would run separately this year, but the idea would be to move forward in a co-op fashion. We currently co-op at the high school level for track and cross country with Dodgeville. They have been open to this suggestion. And I think it's something that we could probably have in place by the start of next school year, then in the fall when middle school cross country would start, that we would hopefully be in that co-op scenario.
Any questions or comments about that? Okay. All right, operations.
Sure.
Mr. Skelding.
Yeah, so we met last Thursday. A couple different items we talked about. First one was, so back in January at the school board conference, some of us listened to a presentation on a operational assessment that surrounding school district, Yorkville School District went through. as part of their effort to go to referendum. Now, these don't have to be done because of a referendum intent, but there's an organization called Nexus that you can partner with, and Mineral Point used it back in 2017. Kind of does like a state of the union, I'll call it, of like infrastructure, energy efficiency, areas to save money, stuff like that. So Mitch is going to reach out to Nexus to see like what types of assessments are available, and then take that back to operations to discuss further. Next one was around the elementary playground update. So Mr. Ingwell did some research, kind of did some quotes or RFPs with some external partners at 3 different options, like a low, medium, high. Low was around 200,000. The high was roughly 900,000-ish. So really good work done to give us options. Like I had no idea what any of this stuff would cost. So at least gives us a baseline to talk about it further. So Tom's gonna reach out and kind of look at, is there a 3-year plan to do an investment like this? Just understand what other options there are.
I think he also worked with students. He got student input around pieces of equipment and kind of layout and things as well. So there is some connectivity to the kids that are currently in the building too, as to what they would like to see.
Where I also noted a lot of accessibility options and just thinking, like being really thoughtful about what's the surface that it goes on? Can everyone access it? How can we do that over time, etc. So thoughtful.
We'll be looking at maybe grant resources to fund some of that, hopefully.
Right. I think,
Or maybe even community support.
right. I think the external partners even help kind of research grant options. Next item was the middle school, kind of high school, blue sky. If Mr. Austin could have an unlimited budget, like what would he do to this building that you shared a couple months ago at a board meeting? I figured.
Going around talking to people, there's some other things that probably need to be updated.
But for those that don't remember, that was like a weight room, multi-purpose room.
They did tech ed egg area, basically.
That is connected to the building. So students would not have to go outside.
Outdoor space, more usable outdoor space. Things that probably need to be updated in a 30-year-old building.
Overall work continues just to assess like what would something like that cost, so we can continue to talk more about it. Food service update. So Mitch reported out that everything is on track with having that in place as an internal operation starting for next year. And then seal coating we talked about for the parking lots here, and that was around 28,000.
Yeah.
For the board, for the ops committee supported that 3-0. And then we gave Mitch the go ahead to once he gets kind of a final quote on changing waste management providers to make that switch.
Yeah, our garbage and recycling pickup, we'd be looking to switch to waste management at a reduced cost on a per month basis. It would be a reduced cost. So trying to find ways that don't impact students and the learning and still save money for the district and the taxpayers.
Any questions on that? Anything I missed?
Hey, Justin.
Yeah.
I sent you an email about this and I appreciate your response, but I just wanted to bring it up at the meeting tonight. I was reading through all the minutes and read about the sort of high school wish list with a potential, addition for tech ed and other things. And I was just reminded of the fact that we spent about 2 years working on strategic planning and like coming up with the goals that the board wanted to focus on. And like tech ed was one of them that we considered, was one of our goals going to be, we'd have like a premier tech ed facility. But we didn't choose that goal. We chose 3 other goals. We chose governance and we chose social and emotional learning. And we chose, staffing, basically making this a great place to work and making sure we're meeting on compensation and all of those things. And I appreciate, Justin, you writing back and saying, well, we're the ones that asked the question. Like, we asked Matt to come up with a list of, like, if he had an unlimited budget, like, what would he do? And, you know, hearing about a $900,000 playground, it sounds like we asked Tom, you know, like, if you had an unlimited budget, what would you do? But I want to be, I'd urge caution for the board about how far we take these things along, like in terms of engaging with architects to get estimates and all of that stuff, because, you know, we're going to end up getting people's hopes up about some of these various things that different groups of people are passionate about in our district. And they're not our goals. Like, we've clearly stated our goals for the next 2 or 3 years, and these are not those things. I understand with the playground that we're probably assuming that the cost would be more in the $200,000 range or something like that, and that we could pay for this through our fund. Can you remind me, Justin? Fund 46. So, you know, I understand that, but I guess that's just the point I'll make, is that it gave me some pause to say, we spent a lot of time strategic planning. We came up with some goals, and I don't want to go too far down the rabbit hole of other things that aren't our goals, to ruffle a bunch of feathers in the community about it.
Yeah, I think you bring up a fair point. I think our job is to also get like a baseline of facts. I mean, everybody asks, like, what would it cost to do X, Y, Z? And if we don't have that, then we can't share what that would take for the community to invest in.
Yeah, I think another distinction I would make is that the board goals are the board goals. There was not like wide community outreach or agreement around those. So those aren't necessarily our strategic plan for the whole district. I think that's like, we would need to do that outreach if we were needed to go to referendum. And now we'd have some data to base some of our options on in terms of what's going to be needed for the next 5 years for maintenance or to get the school district up to speed. And we'd have some baseline to bring to people so they can respond and say, like, no way, I don't want you to invest in that. I want you, you know, or whatever, versus just starting with a wide open, we need a referendum. So I think, to me, that's a distinction. I agree with you. Like, there is a risk of, like, all of a sudden this ends up on an agenda somewhere to approve it, which is not the intention of this fact-finding machine, is my understanding. Right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, just to give a little more context to it, I mean, you're exactly right. This is separate from our board priorities that we're setting for, you know, this year and next, in terms of what we're focusing on. I see this as a couple things. One is, we're responding to feedback that maybe some of you have been getting, but definitely I've been getting, such as, we need a new weight room. We can't fit more than 25 kids in this dilapidated weight room. We need to do something about it. Or, you know, our wrestling room is a converted, you know, old basement room. You know, we need more storage. We have no space. You know, we're not even using our stage and our cafetorium that much. You know, the back door to the ag room is unsafe and it's unsecure, and we need a better solution for that. We need new science labs because they're out of date. You know, all those kind of things, I think, press us to say, okay, let's look at what this would mean. Obviously, we probably can't afford any of these in a vacuum in a 1-year budget or even out of Fund 46. So this has to be a facilities plan that would have to be supported by a capital referendum at some point, right? So instead of going to capital's referendum to pay for a weight room, it's probably wiser to go to a capital referendum to fund an entire upgrade of the campus, depending on the overall cost, but with community input, you know, just like we did with the elementary school remodel. You know, you have a workshop where you invite people in and say, hey, what do you think of this idea? What do you think of this idea? What do you think of this plan? Oh, I like that. We don't need that. What about this? And I think starting this process shows the community that we're forward thinking, right? And that we're planning for the next 10 years for this campus, knowing that it's not going to meet our needs. It's already not meeting our needs, right? And there's no timeline necessarily, but I think it's important that we start putting these ideas together in a plan so that we can start to have a vision of maybe what the next upgrade of this campus would look like whenever we and the community are ready to support something of a certain degree.
I also think that these conversations serve as like the very, very beginnings of our next set of goals. So we said the goals that we had set were kind of 1 to 3 years. We're almost done with year one. So, a year from now, it's going to be time to be checking in and saying, hey, I think we've accomplished most of what we wanted to accomplish in this space. Where are we headed next? And these conversations help feed what comes next, whether it's, we wanted to do a full campus improvement plan and think about a capital referendum, and that's going to be one of our next goals. But this is the starting point, like these, just trying to get all the puzzle pieces picked up and think about how they might fit together.
I think we can do both and,
Yeah.
I mean, I think this board has met and has intentions to upgrade our strategic plan with community input sometime this summer.
The district's strategic plan.
Thank you. Yeah, the district strategic plan. I think that can be simultaneously with the facilities plan. Now, obviously, I think you want a facilities plan to align with your strategic plan. And I think that's Will's point,
Yeah, totally.
and I think that's really the intent. But, I think the timing is, we've had expressed needs we've had comments with certain needs in the district. Mr. Oster is aware about them. He's been thinking about them for a while. We had operations committee and it just kind of say, well, let's just see a rough sketch of what you're thinking about or a short list of, what you'd like to see upgraded. And I think that can continue alongside, a district strategic plan without making any kind of commitment.
Yeah, I think it's necessary. I
For
mean,
sure.
it's a data point that's essential to be able to
Right.
even start. So I think does that make sense, Will? What are your responses?
Yeah, I understand what you're all saying and respect it. I respectfully disagree. So I think that we spent a lot of time thinking about what our priorities would be. I understand it's not a strategic plan, but we talked about these things like, do we want to put an emphasis on sports in our school? Do we want to put an emphasis on social and emotional learning? Do we want to put an emphasis on tech education? Like, what do we want to do? I think we deliberately said that we didn't want to do those things that you're now talking about putting money into, and the administration is we're paying the administration right now to put time and effort into this, and it's not something we've discussed. So I understand where you're going, and I'm sure that there's people out there that want a new weight room and wrestling room, etc. But that's fine. We don't always have to agree.
It's an important question.
Anything else for operations? Okay, Mr. Skelding, let's review policy committee.
First item we talked about was, so earlier this year, we signed up to have WASB do a review of all of our policies.
Yeah.
So we got their great exhaustive feedback on that. So there's 6 mandatory ones we got to look at right away. So Angie's going to divvy up, I believe, 2 to Rachel, Aaron, and myself for us to review against the feedback to get those done right away, and then just kind of work through that laundry list. Then we talked a little bit about the truancy policy. Just kind of like an open-ended discussion around like how it's done with Mr. Ingwell. Like we kind of just had a discussion around how to make it kind of human centered. It's not just you reach a number and boom, a letter goes out, but like you reach a number and then there's a phone call and a discussion around the situation. Since there's a lot more nuance than just a number that says, hey, trigger this letter. I think we need to get back to policy committee on updating that. Talked a little bit about kind of kicking off a policy around artificial intelligence. We discussed we have much more flexibility if we build it into the student handbook. So I know Mitch was going to reach out to Miss Uppena, who has some experience with, kind of AI policy and in the school realm, and get her thoughts on kind of next steps with how we incorporate something like that.
Can I ask a clarification on that? Is it AI policy teaching students how to use it, or on like a staff side, or both?
I'd say both.
Okay,
All
Great.
encompassing.
that's great.
Yeah, I think the intent is, AI is here, and how can we as a district leverage that for good things, especially from a staff kind of prep and organizational standpoint or educational standpoint, and then also, how can we use it educationally and also police it in a way that it's used to enhance learning rather than circumvent learning,
Sure.
right? So just looking forward to having things. I think the community just needs to know that we're aware that this is an issue and that we're looking at ways to better describe and just regulate the kind of set parameters around using it in the school.
Great.
Next item was the annual work plan. So we went through, and also as a follow-up from when we got together in January from our winter retreat, like how do we optimize how we work in board meetings, going quarterly for the principal updates, then what other groups do we kind of circle in on a every X amount a month kind of basis. I know we'll probably touch on some of that in the board evaluation tool. I know there were some comments in there and I put some in there as well. But good discussion with the intent of having final draft by next month's board meeting. And Mitch, you want to talk on policy 672? You can probably explain that in the fewest amount of words.
Sure. Policy 672 deals with purchasing within the district. And my question was, when we present our annual budget, I give you all of the numbers rolled in. This is our budget for operating. So the technology budget's in there, the maintenance budget's in there. Everything that we're running through Fund 10, Fund 27, all of those things are within the budget that's approved. This year, you've got a balanced budget in October. So then my question comes back to, in policy 672, anything over $10,000 needs to have board approval. But some of those things that are over $10,000 have already been approved in the budget itself. And my case in point comes back to the technology that I'm asking for tonight. There are some labs that we need to upgrade. These are things that are put in the budget, in the technology budget. I think I even put in my update, I talked about there was $73,000 put into the technology budget to update these new machines, these new labs. But because each area comes in at over $10,000, you've already approved it once in the budget. Now I'm coming back to ask you to approve it a second time. And I kind of think there's some redundancy here in this. I look at, I think we had an opportunity. We're looking at replacing some school vehicles that have given us everything they can give us and need to be transitioned out. We had an opportunity to buy a van, and needing to wait for a board meeting to approve that purchase. The van wasn't available anymore, so we lost out on an opportunity on a really decent vehicle to replace one of our large passenger vans. And so my thought is that if there's things that are put into the district budget, looking at maybe is there a way to put a dollar amount or a wording in there that if it was already in the budget, I'm not going to do anything in secrecy. I would certainly let you know, hey, $40,000 was put in the tech budget. I'm going to spend 25 of it right now on this. I will keep the board informed, but sometimes having to wait a little bit longer, we lose out on some deals or some pricing opportunities. So again, it's been approved once already, and now it's coming back again for a second approval. I'm just looking for ways that we might be able to avoid, some of those delays that might cost us in the long run. I didn't have any recommendations for language and said we would bring this back to another policy committee meeting again so we could talk about what kind of changes we might look at doing moving forward.
Yeah, I think the intent was the visibility still is there. It has to be there. But like, what do we do with budgeted and unbudgeted items? To give you the flexibility to just go make purchases if it's already budgeted for. But maybe use the weekly updates from Danielle to give that visibility. But to me, it makes sense. We just got to work through what that language looks like.
Just being transparent about so if we budgeted, $30,000 for new science lab equipment, just in alignment with what the original idea was versus what your current intent is to purchase. And that could come through a weekly thing. That's what you're saying?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that makes more sense than.
Yes, and if I think another safety net is if we decided, the science people, teachers come back and say, no, we don't need it. What we've got is good, but we wish to use that $30,000 somewhere else. That requires a budget amendment. That requires coming back to the school board. Again, for transparency's sake, just saying, well, you gave me permission to spend 30. I'm not going to do it here. I'm going to do it there. I would have to come back to the board and say, I'm looking for a budget amendment. These revenues were not, or this expense was going to happen here. It's not anymore. We want to move it to this point. And that would require board approval. And to Andy's point, I think it had to be 75%, I believe, is the right percentage for a budget amendment. So, it's not something that can just simply be done without your knowledge.
And there's nothing in stone saying that you can't email us earlier in the week if something comes up either.
Correct.
So.
Yeah.
Doesn't have to wait till the Friday update either. Right?
Just for clarity, no changes were made, but some possible changes were discussed, and we'll be revisiting that at another committee meeting for possible full board approval. But the intent is to give some flexibility and opportunities for cost savings, and yet still provide appropriate supervision for the entire budget. Great. Anything else for policy committee? Okay, thank you. We'll go to action items and talk about the district calendar for next year.
So in your board package, you have the work from the calendar committee. Will, you are correct. School cannot start prior to September 1 without a waiver granted by the DPI. There are very limited reasons for granting waivers. Although for your information, I just filed my support for an additional area for waiver on school start dates. If schools do a lot of work and co-op with a lot of universities and tech colleges to try to line up calendars a little bit better. I know we have several students that that attend Southwest Tech or take classes through Southwest Tech. They tend to start before September 1. Everybody's university, all those first semesters are done kind of before Christmas. So if there were a way for us to look at filing a waiver in the future, I would strongly support that, and we'll most likely be bringing that forward in another year's time. That's not in this calendar. Our start date would actually be September 3rd, which is the Tuesday after Labor Day weekend. So the Iowa County Fair will be completed and over before we start school this coming fall.
That is the earliest legal date.
September 3rd is the earliest day we can start school this next year without any kind of a building waiver or anything like that. Some school districts are in the middle of a building project and can start earlier. we're not in that boat, so we cannot start any earlier than September 3rd.
That's why we were able to start earlier, September 3rd, when the elementary was being remote.
Correct.
Yeah.
So,
Okay,
go ahead.
I'll take a motion to approve this calendar. And we can have any further discussion if needed.
And seconded.
Any further comments or questions?
I had a question about, and I emailed about this and you did respond, Mitch, about like MLK Day and the fact that this year at least we're honoring it. The kids won't be in school, but the teachers still have PD. So I'm curious, I mean, it's the only national day of service that's federally recognized. It's also the only state holiday that we don't acknowledge. I'm curious if there's a PD plan in place already for next year, or that there's typically a PD plan in place that we do need to have teachers work on that day versus having a day of service, or what the rationale was by the committee for not honoring that holiday.
In the staff handbook, in the employee handbook, Martin Luther King Day is not a recognized holiday in the handbook. Paid time off holiday in the handbook. I tried to share, cut and paste that. It didn't come out as clear, but so that is something that can be adjusted. It would take two readings from the board in order to make any changes to that handbook language. So in essence, we've kind of followed what has been done in all of the past years. The first semester in this calendar technically would end on Friday, January 17th. So that Monday would be a day off. There's usually a work day or a PD day or a combination day at the end of the first semester, especially for teachers at this level that might have semester-long courses. So that's why that day was laid in where it was. I did bring up the request about Martin Luther King off, and the committee thought this was at least a workable solution, that at least the students would not be in on that day. But again, it can be revisited moving forward.
Yeah, I would like to keep it. I mean, I understand that like we need to pass a calendar, but just keeping in mind like some of the board goals and being able to provide community service in our communities and acknowledge some holidays, it feels a little bit off to have all the other holidays.
We do provide community service at the high school level on a different day. We don't pick Martin Luther King Day for that.
No, absolutely. I'm just thinking like community wide, like there's a lot of things that you can participate in throughout the area. We're not that far from Madison either. Just something that I noticed when we moved here that I felt was a little interesting, and then it still continues to be interesting, and I'm not sure where it came from or why. But it did make me wonder about the PD plan, which we can talk about another plan. I wondered if it was part of a sequence, but it sounds like it's a day for teachers to finish up. It's not really PD, it's really a day for them to work and get caught up on the end of the
Some of it
training
will be, I mean, there might be some different plans in both buildings too. With Act 20, the elementary has some PD built into next year's calendars on Wednesdays and some of the PD/work days. So there could be already some plans in place around that as well. That might be bringing in an outside speaker, especially for them.
If we wanted to discuss amending the handbook regarding what holidays we assign as paid time off or not, I think that would be like a personnel committee decision or
like
finance
staff reps.
Yeah, you might even start with that committee and then bring it forward.
Yeah, that would be a good one.
Yeah.
So if you remember in the email I sent, there was, if you were a 260-day employee, there were 10 days. If you are less, there are 6 days that are recognized as paid time off.
Okay.
So I mean, that's just something to look at moving forward then.
Okay.
Yeah, that feels, the staffing group feels like the logical place to put that. Like how do they feel about it?
Nice.
Yeah, I thought of that too. And then
For year-round staff.
for year round. Yeah,
Mhm.
great point. I was like, well, school's closed, so it doesn't matter then, but it does for everybody else.
I have an additional question, not nearly as, important. Well, at the homecoming week that's scheduled for the first full week in October.
Yep.
So as I recall last year, kind of after the fact, I had heard some chatter about the volleyball teams not having an opportunity to play on their at-home game during that week. And I just wondered, was that taken into account this year to ensure that that those students have an opportunity to feel like they get to, have their craft acknowledged in kind of that with the spirit and enthusiasm of homecoming?
I'm not going to say that it was.
Okay.
Partly because you're talking about conference play, and our conference commissioner lays out a conference schedule.
Okay.
And a lot of times, once you get into this time of the year, volleyball is playing on Tuesdays and Thursdays, Tuesday, Thursday. Some years it's like every Tuesday's a home game and Thursday's an away game. Typically what they try to do is, if at all possible, they reschedule that Thursday game because that's the night of the parade and all of those things. So they try to, whenever possible, they try to reschedule that. So I don't know what the conference schedule looks like for that week. If there is indeed a home game on that Tuesday night, hopefully for our girls or not, that I don't know. And typically it's going to sound awful, but homecoming is, it's a fall event around a football game. So when do we have a home football game too? And that might be the last home football game of the season that week on that Friday. So sometimes that plays a factor into when is homecoming week, when is there a home football game.
You reach out to Mr. Carr if
Yep.
you want to pursue that any further.
It might be early enough. It might be early enough to get a switch. If we're on the road on that Tuesday, when do we play that school in the first half that was here? And can we flip those 2 dates? Can we come to your place the first game and you come to our place on Tuesday, October 8th? I think now is the right time to make those arrangements happen.
Either comments or questions about the calendar? Okay.
Building,
Yes.
Bergstrom,
Yes.
Harris,
Yes.
One more time, Will.
Yes. Yes. You
So
get
I
it?
think he said,
yes.
I think he said yes twice and I couldn't hear it.
Eisner,
Yes.
Johnson,
Yes.
Dunn.
Yes. Okay. Next is to discuss the addition of a middle school reading interventionist and a special education teacher for the district can I say more specifically in the special education?
It would be a district-wide position.
Yeah.
And we're looking at these are 2 new positions currently not staffed. So it's not like we're replacing a retiring employee to address needs that we have as a district for the 24-25, starting in the 24-25 school year. I'm not going to say for that year, starting in that year and moving forward is what these positions would be for.
Can we say in general what the special ed teacher would be doing?
They would be the case manager for some specific students that we have. And we have a need. It was brought to committee. There was notes shared. If you wish to get any more specifics, then I would say you'd need to go to closed session in order to discuss so that we maintain and respect the rights to privacy.
I think the general percentage increase in students who have needs is one rationale, right?
Correct. Yeah, our student
Aggregate
population has
number.
increased.
So basically, if we want to go into any further detail about what the specific special needs are and what grades the students are in, those kind of things, we would need to discuss that in closed session, which is totally fine if we feel like we need to do that to help you decide whether you're going to approve it or not. But given that, Joni, do you, as the personnel chair, do you want to just talk about the recommendations out of committee?
Yes, so if you do reference the committee meeting notes, that we did have some fairly extensive discussion around both of these positions. Are you looking at this point, Dr. Dunn, to talk about both positions or just about the district-wide special education position?
Why don't you start with the reading interventionist
Okay.
first?
So the reading interventionist focusing on is a position that would focus on our middle school area. And from a committee perspective, we were very supportive of this. This was, actually, let Mrs. McGrath come forward. When you think back to when Ms. Stahl was as the outgoing middle school principal left us, we had asked, what is the one thing, if money wasn't an object, what is the one resource, or what is the best thing we could do to, provide additional resources to our students? And this was what she had asked for. And with that, I will let Ms. McGrath talk to us about her findings.
I think that some of you have this information.
Yeah.
So I just kind of laid out where we were in the fall. If you look at our urgent intervention numbers and intervention in each grade level, and just we would take a lot of things into consideration. We would take their longitudinal data. Is this outlier test? Those types of things when deciding who would be receiving intervention. So this is what we had in the fall. We moved, luckily we moved some of those down a little bit, but still we have some pretty big numbers in our 6th, 7th, and 8th grade who are falling into that urgent intervention, which is less, or 10% or less, and then from up to our 20th was what we kind of look at, which is quite a few people who could be using some reading intervention support. We do sometimes sneak up into that 20 to 25th, depending on what that longitudinal data is telling us. But we really see a need to support our kids. We've always had kids. I know we brought this up that even my first year here, when I wasn't doing reading intervention, I got brought into it because we had students who needed support. We've always had kids who have needed it. We just haven't had anybody to give that those foundational skills to those striving readers. So we then had FastBridge in the fall, and this assesses differently. And so we screened 20 students, and we had some pretty glaring scores, I would say. And overall, teachers are doing a really nice job trying to fit it in with what we're doing with our CFAs. We are not equipped to handle teaching our high risk that are learning skills in grades 1 and 2 and 3rd grade. So I think that's where our really big need is coming from. So I was asked to put a schedule together. So this is a very tentative schedule. Matt and I are still working on it. However, you can see that an interventionist would basically have access to students all day long, and groups would be decided on what those skills are that we need to target to increase our numbers. Increased skills can be anywhere from a year to a year and a half growth. Sometimes things just really end up clicking in middle school, and other times you still are fighting a lot of different things that middle schoolers are going through. So the data is a little inconclusive there. It really depends on the student a lot. And I mean, I think we do kind of see that overall, even at CISA, they were talking about middle school scores do dip just because of the nature of what all middle schoolers are going through. But Ms. Dahl talked about this need. I know her and I talked, is there any way to add in more intervention? In the past couple of years, I was pretty stuck. So that's what I have. If you have other questions, I'm happy to address.
I think the issue comes, could somebody on staff do it? And well, the middle school is pretty well booked up throughout the day, but if there were a staff member that was available, they'd be available 1 hour of the day, 1 45-minute block. And do the students that they need to work with, are they available at that same time? It doesn't work out in schedules that way, where this individual would have that flexibility to be available throughout the day to work with any student at any time throughout the day, whenever it worked into that schedule, their student schedules.
A lot of our teachers are on an overload already. So one thing that I did share at the committee meeting was this would also allow our science and our social studies teacher to be available during our advisory time. That's something that I've heard from friends who have their kids go through middle school. There's never a time to meet with anybody. And so that would allow Dan and Brett to flip flop who has study hall. And if they have a test, if they have students who are struggling, a lot of times when we're in middle school, students really don't understand how to study. So they could be running study groups on exactly what to study, asking them questions, maybe writing down their essay, getting more feedback. Right now, those things happen, but they're either after school, before school, and usually that goes back on the parent. Can they get them here before? Can they pick them up after? So that's also another thing that we have found is a struggle.
This would be a full-time position in the middle school. Is it possible that if there's any high school kids that are struggling, like at an urgent need, that maybe they could access this interventionist as well?
Yes.
Okay.
I think something that I think is with my own daughter is approaching middle school. And I just think, even though we really want to target our early intervention, and we absolutely do, because we see a ton of growth at that early stage, I just never want to look at a parent and say, for your 12-year-old, your 13-year-old, we just didn't have the tools. So.
Something that came out of the conversation during the committee meeting that stuck out to me was that we have a really strong special education program. A lot of these students aren't necessarily they don't necessarily have an IEP, or they aren't necessarily receiving special education services, but they're still falling below the standard we'd like to have them at. And this is the boost. This is the opportunity for us to give them the boost that they need to set them up for future successes. It's filling a gap that we have today.
In addition, would their role be to assess the gap for like 6th, 7th, and 8th in total? Not like, obviously we want them to help our kids, but also like look at the school in total and be like, here's where we need to focus.
Yeah, so that would help us create our building SLO, and that's what drove us to do our CFAs. And they would be anybody who is a reading interventionist. We love data. We love to see our students grow, but even more, we want to see confident readers. So how can we go about that? And we always fall back on our data and what it's showing us.
You could be able to provide the regular classroom teacher with some additional tools and tricks to help. Well, you have this reading passage coming up. Here's something you might want to try as your students are reading this, whether it's in the science classroom, the history classroom, that there'll be a bigger umbrella that this position will be able to cover, other than just our handful of struggling readers as well. They'll be able to touch a lot of other places.
We have wonderful reading interventionists at the elementary school, and every time I contact them, they are always willing to help, but it's difficult because they're really strapped in their schedule as well, but they're always willing to help. So I see this as how I've worked with them over the years. I see this as like a partnership, and really not just building up our students. I think, what could they provide for our staff too? Rachel Schrader came in last year and did a wonderful short training for us, and everybody wanted more. Not only did they want it for our students here, but that will help my kids at home as well. So I think the more that we can spread that knowledge, I think we will see the benefit.
Aaron, are you looking for a motion?
Licensed reading interventionist?
Yeah, like at least a 316, and then possibly, depending on what that is, it could also be a 317.
317 would be good for the overall
Yes.
capacity building.
Yeah.
What's that? 317.
It's
It's a licensure.
it basically means like you can teach other teachers how to help with
Cool.
reading. A gross summary of it. So with the 20 minutes, I have a question about the 20 minutes. By the time you move to a room, sit down, get situated, sharpen your pencil, whatever, get a drink. Is that going to be a sufficient?
So we really have 45 minutes to be playing around with there. So I did this for many years. Kids are fantastic about knowing where to go. It's not like at the elementary where they have to go door to door and collect everybody. Middle schoolers have a fantastic grasp on time. I don't know if that's good or bad.
Did you hear
but-
that, my child?
But they are there when they're supposed to be there, and you can solidly work for that time. So either they have that 3 minutes transition if you're at the beginning of class, like that's where they just show up. Otherwise, they give enough time where they can get there and you're just ready to get going.
And then the connection to the elementary instructional materials and curriculum, that would come over time because of the licensure and the.
And we have built up some of those. Rachel's helped me build up some of those materials because we've had to purchase more if we're using them at the same time.
Will has a question.
Yes, Will, thank you.
Are you looking for a motion to approve these together or separately?
Separately, please.
I'd like to make a motion to approve this position.
Okay, Harris Skelding. Any other comments or questions? I have a couple comments. I shared these at committee, so, but I just want to just say these publicly. First of all, I think this board has seen enough data to recognize that we have a serious reading problem. I think there's multiple reasons why, but I think this is a high priority in my mind. And I'm well aware that this is adding to a budget that's already looking at a deficit. So I don't take this decision lightly, and this is not, I can't think of a perfect analogy, but this is kind of akin to something critical happening in the school that we didn't anticipate that needs repair. Like say our whole cafeteria caught on fire, or say, both boilers went out at the same time and need to be replaced. Like right now, we don't have any money in the budget, but we just have to find it, right? Because we can't function without it. And I feel like, as a community member, as a parent, as a taxpayer, the minimum thing we can do for our kids is let them leave this school with the ability to read. At baseline, if they can do anything, they need to be able to read and just function at functional literacy in society for them to be successful. And I think whatever we can do to reach that goal is worth it. So that's why I'm supporting this. Okay. G.
Harris,
Yes.
Yes. Yes.
Gelding,
Yes.
Yes.
Dunn.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for all of that data and that information.
Hey, Joni, you want to set up the next one?
I set up the next one very carefully.
You can defer to Angie if you want.
Yeah,
She's used to
to
systematically
speak on this.
describing.
So this is a request for a district-wide special education position for a unique and specific population of students. And with that, I will turn it over to Angie to speak as much as we need to in open session or ask us to defer to closed session.
Yeah, and I'm just gonna reiterate so you all hear, it's to get into specifics would potentially people would be able to identify who we're talking about. So I'm very cautious and wanting to get into a lot of information. So I'm happy to stay for closed session if need to. Really, it comes down to an increase in special education students, especially over the last 11 months. but over, I kind of gave you the data over a 3-year cycle. You know, in 21-22, we're at 12% of our student population was identified for services in special education. And this year, as of December 1st, we were at 14.2%. So just an increase in general to the number of students who are requiring additional services and supports. And this was the way that we felt we would be able to make the most impactful support for our students, and also provide some better balance for our other staff members who are trying to support a wide variety of students at multiple levels. And it you know, we're making it work, but we want to make sure that we continue to provide the best services that we can, and that we feel this would be the best way to do that moving forward.
I would echo my comments on the reading interventionist as well. This position would be able to have a positive influence on regular ed classroom teachers too, that work with students, giving them additional tools to help make them successful and push them and help them grow in their education as well. So I think, again, this position could have a much broader impact than just on a select group of students or one department. You know, because it is district wide, it has the potential for having a much larger impact across the school district.
Me personally, I don't need to go into closed session. I thought the business case was justified. So I'm going to make a motion.
Sure. I mean, we can either make a motion to table this until after closed session, or we can make a motion to approve it in open session.
Does anybody want to go into closed session?
I don't need to.
I think the percentage data is really clear.
Then I'll make a motion to approve the district-wide educational support we need for the agenda.
Second.
So this was recommended 2-0 out of personnel committee, for the record.
Yes.
I'm also going to support this despite the fact that it is a new staff member. I think this is a little bit different in the fact that it's to meet unique needs for a unique set of students that are here in this moment in time. So it doesn't necessarily mean that we'll need this position indefinitely. Is that fair to say?
So some of these students are all the way down at the elementary,
I
so it's truly is
understand.
the district.
It'll be a little while.
But it might be a while, yeah.
Well, I think the number of students at this point is
Yes,
going to justify a
Yes.
full-time position.
Correct.
Right? It's going to be through the special ed budget, so there will be
Percentage
partial
back.
reimbursement. And there's anticipation that our total special ed budget will go down
In another year's
in
time.
another year.
Yeah.
Which would help to absorb this
Yeah.
for future
Would
budgets.
certainly offset the cost.
The other, these are our students. These are students who we have, as a school district, we have an obligation to provide education to. And these are the resources we need to be able to do that.
And I will say
Period.
that several of these, I mean, you know, they're new to us, but I think all of the students that we're talking about, parents have chosen to move into this district so that their children could come to this school over a number of years, and especially in the last few. So
We want to provide the best education for all of our students.
Amen. That was my last comment.
Yep.
These are our kids. These are pointers. So that's why I'm going to support it. Okay.
Belding.
Yes.
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 Eisner,
Yes.
Johnston.
Yes.
Dunn.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Angie.
Thank you, Angie.
Okay, next is approval of purchase over 10,000, and you've got a list of them.
Correct. So, as came out of the operations, recommended out of the operations committee, the seal coating that is part of, that is in the regular maintenance budget. So wait, I'm not asking for Fund 46 dollars. That bid came in at $28,500. It is to seal coat both parking lots up here and the main driveway. We will need to revisit the smaller parking lot and then the road that wraps around the building on the north side to the back where the loading dock is. The blacktop is really cracking and spidering and in need of replacement. So next year we may be looking at a total replacement, but seal coating should be able to buy us at least one more year. So that is one of the projects that we were looking for approval. One of the things I would like to point out from CM Consultants, one of the bids I don't necessarily need your approval on because it actually is coming in at $7,000 for some of the office staff equipment due to some changes, but I listed it in there. We have currently 13 laptops out in the ag department that run as a lab. They help run his a laser cutter, plasma cutter out there. They are 7 years old. Replacing the 13 machines with the proper specifications would come into at a tune of $15,500. Again, CM Consultants is working on a final bid from Dell. It might come in a little bit less, so that bid would not exceed that. And then Mr. Austin could certainly talk to this one about the graphics art lab. I've been putting that one on hold for many, many years now. Those machines are past their prime, and we've made them last as long as we possibly can. We're actually looking at going away from desktop units to Mac laptops in a cart. That cart would be able to be utilized in more areas throughout the day. Then it can be used for graphics arts. It could be used for yearbook. It could be used for media. And we just had a lot of conversations around how do we better utilize the dollars in more ways than just a graphics art lab that might just sit and be used 2 hours of the day and then sit empty the rest of the day, unless a student had some work in there. So that Mac lab comes in at about a $30,000 cost to upgrade that lab. And it would be MacBooks, not MacBook Airs. It would be a little bit more robust machine. I'm asking for permission to make those purchases. Total, I'd given a price tag in my update. I have $73,000 available in our tech budget for this equipment rotation. This comes in at about $65,000, or probably come in even a little bit less with some updated better bids. But I'm asking for permission to go ahead and move forward with these purchases.
I'll make a motion to move forward with the purchases.
I will second.
Any other comments or questions?
You have one question.
Yep.
Just really quickly. So we have a multi-year phase-in plan for technology. Is that accurate?
Yes, they have.
And this fits within there. So there's nothing else waiting this year to get upgraded from that $73,000.
Potentially, there would be some smart boards yet we would look to update. Depending on where all these costs come in, we might be looking to maybe add or replace a couple of smart boards. But yes, they give me a spreadsheet that says, in 24-25, we recommend these being rotated out. It might be some Chromebooks. This batch of Chromebooks is now 5 or 6 years old. They need to go. They won't support the testing software and so on and so forth. So yes, they do a very good job keeping us up to date and helping us keep costs more reasonable on a year-to-year basis. Yep.
Anybody else?
Johnson,
Yes.
Skelping,
Yes.
Bergstrom,
Yes.
Harris,
Yes.
Heisner,
Yes.
Dunn.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, next we'll go into board business. This is our quarterly review of the meeting self-evaluation tool. Thanks to everyone who filled that out. Overall, it looks like the scores improved. Averages we had a handful of ones and a lot of twos in certain areas. I think where we seemed to improve was the board packet seems to be better. There's more data attached. Some more helpful explanation in the agenda, so that's good. I think I didn't see any really decreased scores on any specific topics. I think the comments really centered around how can we make our meetings more efficient and shorter. I think a lot of it centered around our discussions about the annual work plan, and I think those tie in pretty well. I think that's really our next step, is to solidify what we want to hear about in these regular meetings and how we can maximize, I guess, the time of our admin team and other partners to help us make the best decisions to get the information we need. So if you guys didn't know, while we were discussing in the policy committee, Rachel was updating the Google Doc work plan in real time. So thank you for doing that. So I think we're close to getting it where we want it. So Will, I don't know if you had a chance to look at it, but I think if you go under the school board annual work plan under the shared Google Docs, you'll be able to see the changes we've made. But you can also share it out at some point. So I think if we get that solidified, we're bringing that back to the next policy meeting. Is that right?
Or April board meeting.
April board meeting.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think you're gonna work with admin to get actual dates of like, when would they have data to support their goals?
Yeah, which month makes sense for them to report out on some of the academic data and goals and things. So yes.
I think we're there.
Yeah. Okay.
All right, thank you.
Anything else we want to try to change before the next kind of quarterly evaluation?
Just a reminder to fill it out.
Yeah.
I missed it on the agenda when I was looking this morning. I was like, oh, crap.
Yeah, I filled it out today as well. Yeah, and what else was I going to say? I think if any other. Oh, I was just going to say that we had a really robust committee cycle this month with all 4 meeting. So that was kind of just a good test of, is the system working? Was that worth our time? I feel like it was.
I'm
curious. We spent some time summarizing the minutes, but
how I curious as to board members who did or didn't attend the opposite night meeting. So like both of mine were on Monday, so I didn't attend Thursday, and I kind of felt like, I feel maybe a little out of the loop, and I could have, but thought I'm not obligated to attend this meeting. I'm just gonna sit it out. I'm wondering if others are feeling my sense of missing out. I think Kirsty, you had to attend both nights.
Yeah, I was
not
nights.
but not had. I don't mean had to.
No, I had policy I had a committee on both nights.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. Dr. Dunn had attended both. I know you maybe you were ill
yes.
or one of them. And you did not attend both nights.
No, with some folks made comments with how good the meeting minutes were, and I think that definitely helped. Like the finance one was like self-explanatory. Same with the personnel one. Like I knew I could come tonight with all the facts.
Okay. And I agree with the meeting minutes for the ones I didn't go to.
That's a good question though. And I think that's why the details matter. Right.
Mhm.
Like I had a new question sent about the intervention specialist, just because return on investment, like it's 20 minutes, like, is it actually going to work? And I got an answer of, yeah. I mean, I heard yes, so fine. Had I not, if those details, if you had asked those questions earlier, which you couldn't have, then those details would have also been in the notes. So I just feel like I would have been a much bigger pain in the butt if the notes weren't there first. But even though
very helpful.
the minutes were very helpful.
Yeah.
Sorry, yes, I'm spinning the drain.
Oh.
Got it.
No, I agree. Yeah, but good point, Joni. I mean, I think coming to as many committee meetings as possible, especially if you get FOMO, that can be helpful.
I will tell you this, that the policy council was so riveting that it took me 30 minutes to realize like, oh, I don't even need to be here.
Wow.
Right.
High praise for the policy
Yeah.
committee.
Yeah, it was a really good meeting. Then I was like, you know what, I'm done. Done for the day.
Okay, good. Will, do you want to add any comments to how we can improve our meetings, at least for the next quarter?
Well, I didn't attend any of the meetings,
I know.
so
You have 3 minutes.
albeit I'm in a different hemisphere right now. I concur. I thought the minutes were great, so I sat down yesterday, I read through all of them, and I felt pretty informed. In terms of other things, I think we just got to keep, working on the things we're scoring lower on, but it's going really well.
Great. Thanks, Will. Okay. And let's go over the parking lot real quick. Did anyone see anything that we are missing or forgetting to follow up on? We talked about the recruitment video.
I think line 11, you have review of food services Taher. We could probably take that one off since we've decided to move away from Taher. You can mark that completed or whatever you want to do.
Got it. Thank you.
Should we prioritize like 3 at a given time or something?
Well, I think I could organize them by date expected. And then I also, once we kind of assign a category to each of them, that'll help me kind of organize them too.
Category meaning like a board goal or a.
You can also organize them in terms of completed.
Oh, yeah.
Get those towards the bottom or the top.
Yeah, you can make it disappear too. You just go away. Option.
Yeah. Okay.
Just
like
if
an
you're
assign-
wanting to make the list smaller.
I need to take a further look at it.
Okay.
I just accidentally moved something.
Yeah, I'm like scrolling around. I hope I'm not accidentally moving things. I just have to keep zooming it in bigger so I can see it and then zooming out so I can
think
see where I'm at in
I
it.
think a lot of these completed ones can be just completed.
Just put a filter
Just
on
hide.
it.
Yeah, so it hides.
Okay.
You can still see the progress then.
I wouldn't call myself an Excel super user. I don't know if
Yeah, filter.
anyone is. Like maybe you
I think
too.
Justin loves Excel.
I think you should go to make these all conditionally formatted. So as soon as we can complete it, like makes a unicorn sound and then goes away.
I want you to tell me more about that, but we don't have to talk about
Not
that
right now.
No, I think we're
He's got one
doing pretty
offline.
well considering.
Yeah.
We're doing pretty well. Okay. Good. Thank you for that. All right. I think that's the end of board business. Now we'll go to employee services, Mitch.
Yes, I actually have a third one that did not get added in.
Okay.
I received a letter of intent to retire. Helen Kloss. This is Helen Kloss's 50th year in education,
Wow.
and she'll be retiring at the end of the school year. Helen tendered her letter of retirement, or intent to retire. We'd like to, thank her, and we'll take an opportunity to thank her again when we get near the end of the school year as a staff. But Mrs. Helen Claus has turned in a retirement letter. Dalton Miles has turned in a letter of resignation. Dalton teaches a combination of middle school and high school English. Dalton has family towards the Milwaukee direction. He and his wife have a new child, and they have been looking to go back that direction for a while. So his letter he explained how much he's appreciated his time here, and kind of with some sadness, but that they're looking to head back towards closer to family. And then the third one that was just a recent addition is Danielle Swenson. Danielle Swenson will be resigning effective the end of the school year. She has a real passion for kind of that social and emotional piece, and has completed a degree that allows her to move into that profession, and wants to take advantage of that. She will be sorely missed in the special ed department, as all three of these employees will be missed at the end of the school year. But I would recommend approving their resignations or retirements with thanks and gratitude for years of service here in the district.
And all three will be posted? All positions?
Correct. All three of those positions will be posted as soon as possible.
Okay. Take a motion.
I'll move that we accept the resignations as presented.
Second.
Okay, Kreisner Johnston, what's Danielle's official title?
She's special education down at the elementary school.
Special ed teacher? Yeah, okay. At the elementary school. She's full-time.
Correct.
Yeah. Okay.
The end of an era, for sure.
Yeah.
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 Can you imagine what's different between, I remember like last time I was in a classroom, iPads were invented, and I feel like a lot's changed since then. So I can't even imagine 50 years. Maybe the kids could do an interview.
When Helen came, she first started teaching in the middle school in the building that's now an apartment complex by the baseball field.
Mm-hmm.
So she started in that building. And as she said that she was hired out of Chicago, she was a Bears fan, and people were able to look past that. We do have a quota. We only allow so many Bears fans as district employees at any one given time. But just very grateful for all the connections she was able to make in the district, out in the community. And yeah, you think 50 years in teaching, how much has changed in 50 years? How much has changed in 10 years? So,
Yeah.
So all 50 years we're here in Mineral Point?
not all 50. No, she started in a private school first. 40. It's in the 40s. I know she's been here 40 plus years.
Wow. She taught people in my era. I did not have the opportunity to go to school here, but I know that there are people who are about my age, and she was their teacher. So, and now she's taught many of their kids.
Yeah.
That's really cool.
Aaron,
Yes, sir.
I happen to have had Mrs. Claus as my 6th grade teacher. And so I just like to say a special thank you to her. And I've seen her at some of these school events, and it's always great to talk to her. I think it takes a really special person to teach that age of kids. There's a lot going on hormonally with young men and women at that age, and I remember what I'll kind of remember her most for is just tough love. Like she was, really caring, but like really strict, like in a good way, to keep us all on task. And her name actually just recently came up. I was traveling with my sister, and I think my niece maybe is in Mrs. Claus's class right now. So Heather and I were both sharing stories because my sister had her as well. And it's funny how much we could actually remember from 6th grade and from her class. So I don't know if Helen's going to be watching this or whatever, but definitely a shout out from me and the rest of the class of 98.
Thanks, Will. Okay. Let's vote on those approvals.
Yes.
Yes.
Gelding,
Yes.
Bergstrom,
Yes.
Harris,
Yes.
Dunn.
Yes. Okay, next is a closed session that we do not need. And next meeting is April 8th. I was looking at tentative agenda items, Mitch. Not a whole lot. It looks like we're gonna hopefully approve a finalized board meeting calendar.
Yeah. And I would put on there salary increases.
So we'll vote on any kind of salary increases for next year. We'll do our monthly financial report. We'll go over our board priorities.
Aaron, I think we need to wrap up this summer school thing.
Yes, thank you. You'll probably vote on the summer daycare program.
Yep.
Will we also have like summer school information at that time as well?
Yeah, Mr. Ingwell and Mr. Austin are working on putting those numbers together, offering sections, so on and so forth for summer school. So yes.
Thank you.
Last week in March, an option for operations.
Spring break week.
Those of us that
I will
haven't
be
taken
around on-
spring break yet.
I will be around that Tuesday, but
I might have to have somebody.
I might be able to do it Tuesday that week. Maybe.
26th, I'll be around.
Wait, am I on that?
No.
Maybe.
We did it.
I'm telling you, they're riveting enough to come to
Sorry, I
ones that
thought
you're
you
not
said
on.
policy, operations policy, they blended my mind.
Then the vice chair might have to run it.
April 3rd's not gonna work? No?
Travel.
Are you out that whole week or
Then my wife's got the election. She's tied up.
on Tuesday?
Monday's out.
Monday's out?
Yeah.
That's the
For
day
you?
we return from spring break.
25th? Or
The week of
In April.
April 1st.
Let me check on the first.
Okay. And there's also the 4th.
Only when you a high
Unless you're-
schooler
You're
student
traveling
that
the rest
likes,
of the
you
week?
know,
Okay.
childcare. We have like a group babysitting, right?
So you're looking at the last week of March. What days work for you or not? That did not work for you.
I'll ping you guys to see what works.
I could
wonder if we
maybe
should
participate
adjourn the meeting.
remotely. The week of spring break.
Let me see if the first can work. I don't want to interrupt people's spring break. Okay.
I'd like to make a motion to adjourn.
One more thing, we'll be, at the April meeting, we'll be recognizing the boys basketball team. So looking forward to that.
Yes.
And there might be some solo ensemble and things like that as
Oh,
well.
good. Well, that'd be fun.
Yeah.
Okay. You motion to adjourn. Is there a
Adjourn.
second?
Second.
Okay.
At 7:59.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Will raise his hand. Good. Anyone opposed? Okay. Buenas noches.